Hey friends, this is Dolynny TV. Glad to have you aboard this afternoon as we get set up to discuss all things Edmonton Oilers from my perspective today as we get set for the Stanley Cup final. Obviously, talking a little bit in that video from the car 2 days ago, talking about how it's kind of the Oilers have arrived, right? They have worked so hard to get here, and now they are here. It is their moment to do something. But I almost want to talk about it. It's been talked a lot already, but I want to talk about it as well from the perspective of what it means to you, me, everybody in between that's been along for this ride. And whether you've been along for all the cups, you've been along for one cup, you've been along for the decade of darkness, I don't care where you're coming from. I don't care what your situation as an Oilers fan truly is. I just want to talk about it more so from kind of where this channel came from in terms of that early 18-19 season into where we are now, right? Watching the McDavid era blossom, right? This is kind of what I've been lucky enough to be able to do on YouTube over the course of the past 6 years. Well, now all of a sudden the Oilers are here. This is the moment. They have arrived. And I just want to talk a little bit about that and kind of keeping that in mind, looking at some stuff maybe back through my history that might apply to some of you back home as well. But if we're new to the channel, I would encourage you to hit that subscribe button, friends. It's been a heck of a playoffs. It's been a fun time, to be honest with you, and I'm looking forward to the Cup final. I will tell you, at current, there are 3 guaranteed live streams for the Stanley Cup final on Dolynny TV. You may ask, well, that's weird. You said you were going to Game 6. Wouldn't that mean 5? Well, I'll tell you why, right? If the Oilers, and it's what I've promised all along, it's kind of how I phrased it, if the Oilers make it to Game 4, they're down 3-0 against Florida, I will be there Game 4 to watch them win or lose. Now that said, that may also set up Game 6, win or lose, and you have to spend twice the money to do half the job, ultimately. Don't care. We'll be there no matter what for the final or what could be final home game, either which way, of the 2024 Stanley Cup playoffs. So that's it. That's where I kind of look at this here. It's an opportunity at present, right? No matter what ticket prices are, no matter if I end up in the fan park, moss pit, no matter where this ends up finishing this year on Dolynny TV, no matter what, albeit not on live stream, it's a moment you don't want to forget. You don't want to like really lose too quick, right? It's something you want to really live in. And I think back to 05-06. This is where I said, right, go through my history to kind of to where we are now. In 05-06, I remember basically being in the basement, downstairs at home, watching the game. The Oilers ultimately lose. You watch Carolina parade the cup around, and it's just absolute chaos in their arena. And it's just so soul-crushing because that was such a just up curve of a season as a young Edmonton Oilers fan, the first one I ever followed the full way through. And it just, of course, that one was hard to follow because there were still pay-per-views back then. Tough. But, yeah, just right up through, and then all of a sudden you're in Game 7 of the Stanley Cup final. You've rode an emotional roller coaster. You have some of the most legendary grinder depth guy names in terms of Oilers history because that was what that roster was for the Oilers, and obviously the legend of Chris Pronger's only year in Edmonton. There's so many things. Dwayne Rollison's greatest moment of Oilers history. You go back through it, and you think about it, right? What do I remember most of that series against Carolina? To be honest with you, yeah, if you look back, you watch some of the intro videos that Hockey Night in Canada did, yeah, 100%. Okay, now the memory's going. But the only strong, like, I can still picture just sitting there feeling that emotion is, of course, watching Carolina parade that cup around. And then shortly, as soon as the cup's been paraded around once or twice, upstairs, bedtime, let's go. Because you still got to go to school the next day, I'm pretty sure. But it's kind of one of those tough things. To the radio I went, of course, right? Like any other good Oilers fan. You can't watch on TV, you turn to the radio. But yeah, it's something where, as an Oilers fan, this time around is knowing how that plays out, right? And having lived that experience. And that's what I mean. If you have gone through the 80s Cups, the 90 Cup, and of course the 05-06 Cup run, obviously the playoff rounds within the realm of 90s, early 90s, late 90s, early 2000s. There's a whole bunch of different playoff histories here, but really outside of a couple of years, there has not been much Stanley Cup Finals history. And you look at this from an Oilers perspective here, is as a fan, you know, if you've lived through any of those cups, and now apologies to those of you that are a little bit younger and haven't really lived through it, right? I guess if you're 19 and younger, well, I guess technically probably about 22 and younger, you really wouldn't know much about how would you do? No, yeah, let's do the math here. Yeah, I guess 22 and younger wouldn't really have the history of 05, 06. So there are a good segment, I'm sure, of the viewers that wouldn't really know what we're talking about here, but knowing kind of what I went through and what I remember now, and looking at it now as somebody who's obviously in a pretty interesting stage of my life, doing this YouTube thing, having the people around me that I do, and that's not just in terms of the Oilers sphere, that's in terms of my entire life. And really, it's just one of those things I really want to, this time around, and obviously the perspective is much different because you're not a kid anymore, Tice, but it's kind of one of those things too with technology and everything that's caught up here, is the experience, even if I'm not in the arena in games, whatever the heck's 4 or 6, and you look at the experience, what it could have been in 05, 06, it's going to be much different given, but it's just so strange because I know what will stick with me at the end of the day, and I want to live in that as long as possible, right? I think as a kid, it's like, oh, soul-crushing, defeated, and you can remember all of those emotions in about a span of 45 seconds, right? You can replay it, I can tell you, and the story's done. Whereas I really want to this time around, and that's something I've said, right? I've made point of I'm going to be there for the final game, is I want to just live in that emotion, live in that moment to the point that, right, you've heard some of the stories I tell after home openers or after the season finale, kind of when I go on my 30-minute rambles about how the experience went. I think some of those videos are my absolute favorite to do, simply because it's literally a lived history of a moment in time that might otherwise not have coverage. Now, the beautiful part here is this is a moment in time which will have a lot of coverage over the course of the next several years, right? And over the 20, whatever it takes the Oilers to get back to this moment in time. Now, obviously, that is counting that it could go bad, it could go great, but just living in that moment. And I mean, yeah, okay, the live stream's fun and all, but you're kind of living it for someone else at that point, and that's not taken away that I very much so enjoy doing what I do here on the channel, but it's one of those things. I want to live that moment with the friends around me that I've built up in this fandom, right? You think Patrick, Gillis TV, those kind of guys, right? Down there in Fan Park, down there in the Moss Pit, wherever it might be. I want to live that, whether it be in the stands as well, and just be able to, when I look back at it, whether it be the next day here on the channel or whether it be 20 years from now, I want to be able to tell someone, right? An actual story, something that takes time to tell, something that has legends to it, something that grows more and more every single time. Because I look back at 05, 06, and I look at it and it's like, yeah, no, I watched the game on the TV downstairs in the basement. It was a crushing defeat, and I went to bed very disappointed, and it was very sad. Well, again, maybe that's what almost 20 years will do to a guy, but at the same rate, I want better story than that. And this is a moment with McDavid, with Draisaitl, with Evan Bouchard, Zach Hyman, Matthias Ekholm, Darnell Nurse, Stuart Skinner, list goes on and on. Nugent Hopkins, may I not forget. It's just insane to think that we have built this story, right? I think the weird part about the 05, 06 Oilers is Kevin Lowe did a lot right in about the 14, 16 months leading up to the Stanley Cup final, as compared to the moment now for the Oilers, where ultimately this has been, yes, you can applaud Ken Holland, you can applaud Daryl Cates, and I will, trust me, at the end of this season, no matter how it finishes up, and my goodness, do I hope it finishes up the way I think it might, but you look at how this all shakes out for the Oilers, is it really starts way back when. Oh my goodness, that is an absolute nasty spider. That is a scary spider, man. Holy, let's go kill that guy. Let's go kill that guy, yeah? Yeah, come on, buddy. Let's fight. Let's dance. Sorry, guys. I should really learn to edit my own videos, but sometimes you just have to do some unexpected things on stream that don't go according to plan. And killing spiders on the stream is one of them. There we go. All right, back to story time here. But yeah, for the Oilers, obviously, right, it started back with the arena deal. It started back with Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, and it's really evolved under Ken Holland, right? Is all that taken to start, and then you evolve it under Ken Holland, and it's been a 5-6 year process. I think 18-19 has to be included because you don't start building this team with what happened that year. And ultimately, you look at where we end up here in 2024, just 4 wins away from the Stanley Cup. It's a journey that I've been on with you back home. I've been on with some friends. I've gained some great, amazing friends along the way. And I quite honestly have to say, it's a journey that we have to look to finish here. And really, for those of us, whether you've experienced it before and you know what you want to capture this time around, or you've never experienced it, let me tell you from at least one lived experience, it's something that I feel ever so strongly about, and this, I can't stress this, is why we've talked for 11 and a half minutes tonight, is that I really just want to go out there and capture every last second of this in my memory to be able to tell these stories for years to come, rather than just have a 30-second snippet about, yeah, it sucked, it was amazing, whatever, and then it was over. I think we have suffered, right? You have to think about what it's been since the last 18 years in the Stanley Cup final, but at the same rate, what has happened in the last 6 years is really, really dang special to watch this team slowly build into a championship team, which actually for some of these playoff games this year has remained unchanged from last year, quite honestly, right? I really don't think there's much change at all other than Connor Brown up front if you look at the start of the year, because you've had Derek Ryan, Warren Foegele, and everybody in the lineup. Outside of Brown, it's the same crew from last year, whereas, right, Henrique and Carrick and Stetcher never factoring in, but Henrique and Carrick haven't been there throughout these playoffs. But the core group we started this season with, this core group we started 2-9-1 with, and it looked like we were about to flush everything we had just achieved over the past 4, 5, 6 years down the drain, rose up. And it's something I asked for in that Edmonton Oilers fold the franchise. I'm like, find me some guys who want to give a dang about this team. Find me some guys who want to play. Find me some guys who care. And every single guy on this roster has stepped up and then some throughout this year, throughout these playoffs, to get to this moment. And now give us fans an opportunity to capture it for good, right? Go out there and make that memory last forever. So I'm looking forward to doing that here, friends. And it's really one thing going into these Stanley Cup finals. It's something that I think goes without saying, but at the same rate too, it's something very special to talk about and something that I want to be able to look back at and say, hey, I put that out there in my own noodle and out there in the public space, and hey, you know what? I went out there and achieved that. So I'm pretty proud of that. So friends, thanks for being aboard tonight. Appreciate being along for the ride. I will catch you tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow's Thursday. We can do that. And then Friday night will be a car edition, and then Saturday's a live stream, I guess. Hey, let's go Oilers, right? Friends, I'm up on out of here. Have a great night.